Royals leading 1-0 here at Kauffman Stadium after 4 innings of play. Joel Goldberg down right behind home plate. Chance to visit with Royals Hall of Fame scout Art Stewart. Been with the club since '69, but from 1953 to 1969 with the Yankees, and a longtime friend of Yogi Berra's. And so I know it's a tough day, but one that so many people are celebrating a great life. And Art, you were telling me that you had a chance to hear from Art or from Yogi, or at least get a message from him last World Series.
Right, Joel. You know, we knew each other. We had a 62-year friendship. And when we were in Frisco last year at the World Series, I had this lovely young lady come up to me and introduced herself. And she says, "I'm Lindsay Berra, Yogi's granddaughter." And she said, "Yogi wanted to congratulate you, even though it's with the Royals now, and not the Yankees, on being in a World Series and hoping that you win the World Series." And he also said, "Now, Art, don't forget, once a Yankee, always a Yankee." That was Yogi. And I gave her some nice things to say, you know, back as he was in the home and he didn't talk on the phone anymore. I hadn't talked or seen him in over 4 years. And after the World Series, on my email, I got a lovely note with him, and she did it, and a picture that she took of Yogi. So he was a very, very special friend, and we had a lot of great times together.
You first met him back in the 50s. What do you remember of Yogi? And you were around so many of those legends in the clubhouse. What was Yogi like in that clubhouse?
He was the guy that kept everybody loose. They all expected, whether it was Mantle, whether it was Whitey, whether it was Billy Martin, Gene Woodling, whoever, they all expected something funny from Yogi, and he always got it. He never disappointed them, and especially if the race was a little close. I was always with him in Chicago because I lived there at the time, and sometimes we'd only be 2 games ahead. Yogi get in there, and he would have that clubhouse. Everybody just forgetting about, hey, we got to win that, just being loose, and that was it. That's the way he was. He was also this is what people don't know. They think, well, he's a comic book guy and a funny guy, but he was one of the smartest catchers I ever saw. You talk about calling a game and knowing every hitter, and even when he managed. We have all this computer stuff today and everything, but he knew how to pitch every hitter, and he would tell the catchers. And he was really, aside being a great player, he was an astute baseball, student of the game, and smart behind that plate.
Well, he played in a lot of World Series, but there was one World Series moment that stands out among all of them, and you were there for it, one of the historic games involving Don Larsen. What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember sitting it was October 5th, 1956, and all the scouts were behind home plate, and what I'll never forget, of course, Dale Mitchell striking out the last pitch. Pinelli rang him up, and then after the game, they're in the clubhouse, and they're all around Don Larsen, of course, and few came over to Yogi, and they said, "Yogi, first thing they said, came over to Yogi, and he said, what's new, fellas? You know, here it is after a perfect game." But he did tell me this. He said that last pitch that Babe Pinelli rang Dale Mitchell up on was 6 inches outside.
Well, he was honest about that, because he said forever, I know, that he thought that Jackie Robinson on the steal home was out. He always stood by that one. So maybe Don Larsen got a little bit of help.
Yeah, I saw that series, and it was tough, from where we sat, but it did look like he had got Jackie. But that bothered Yogi his whole life, because he was so sure he had him out.
Last thing, we heard Rex earlier and talking about Yogi being his first manager, and he couldn't believe that Yogi knew his name, but you were saying to me that was Yogi with everybody.
Oh, exactly, and he was smart, and you wouldn't know it because he was so funny all the time, But boy, he was a good baseball guy, and I'll tell you, the memories of him are just tremendous.
Well, Art, I feel guilty because I know that you don't miss a pitch, and we've now had you miss a few pitches to pass on so many great stories because you were around for so many of them. But we'll let you get back to scouting right here from your seat, and thank you so much for sharing the memories of the great Yogi Berra.
Well, my pleasure, Joel, and I'll tell Dave Island after the game why we have a blank in a fifth inning on a pitching chart.
That would be our fault, but it was worthwhile. The Hall of Famer, Royals Hall of Famer, Art Stewart, tells the stories as well as anyone. I know he's got a great picture with Yogi Berra in his book, so check that out. And guys, we'll let Art get back to work because he's enjoying this game right now by Yordano Ventura.
That's great. Well, you're right, Joel. I mean, we're talking about one of the greatest storytellers in baseball history, and Yogi Berra, and Joel's talking to one of the greatest storytellers in Royals history, Art Stewart, and he sits behind home plate. There is the Buck O'Neill legacy seat. There's also the Art Stewart legacy seat. That's where Art sits for every home game. You can see the little radar gun right in front of him that's mounted on the concrete, and he keeps track of the pitches for every inning. And he was telling Joel that as Miller is safe at first base, telling Joel that he'll have to explain to Dave Island why he had a blank that inning. And look at Joel. Joel's got his tablet out, and they're going over the inning so that Art can catch up on what happened with Seth Smith and Mark Trumbo and Brad Miller as Art was spending time with Joel. That away, Joel.